Coming home early to surprise my wife was supposed to be a romantic gesture. Instead, I stepped straight into a nightmare that would shatter my marriage, drain me in court, and pit my own family against me. But they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated what a broken man could rebuild. My name is Julian Marsh. I'm 42 years old, and up until 6 months ago, I believed my life was in perfect order. I worked as an HVAC technician for Donnie's Climate Solutions here in Springfield, Missouri. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills and kept our 3-bedroom ranch home comfortable all year. Winnie worked part-time at a dental clinic downtown, more for the company than the paycheck, since my income covered nearly everything. We'd been married for 12 years, together since our late 20s. Elijah, our 8-year-old son, was the center of our world. Or at least, I thought he was the center of both our worlds. Turns out, I was only half right. Our life followed a steady rhythm, predictable and safe. I'd wake at 6, share coffee with Winnie while she got Elijah ready for school, then head out to repair heating and cooling systems around town. Evenings were for family, helping with homework, eating dinner together, sometimes a movie on weekends. We weren't rich, but we were steady. Or so I believed. The day everything changed began like any other Tuesday in October. I was scheduled to service a commercial unit across town, but the client postponed until Thursday. Frank Donnelly, my boss, told me to take the afternoon off since we were caught up on calls. Perfect chance to surprise my family, maybe take Elijah to the park after school. On my way home, I stopped by the hardware store and picked up those specialty bulbs Winnie wanted for her reading lamp, the ones that cast a warm, cozy glow she loved. Just a small thing, but after 12 years of marriage, I'd learned the little gestures meant the most. When I pulled into the driveway around 2 o'clock, I noticed Brad Lawrence's pickup truck parked across the street. Brad was our neighbor from 2 houses down, a construction foreman who'd helped me build our deck last summer. Good guy, divorced, lived alone. Nothing strange about seeing his truck nearby. I unlocked the front door and called out as I stepped inside. "Winnie, honey, I'm home early. Got those bulbs you wanted?" Silence. The house didn't feel empty, just charged, like something in the air had shifted. I set the bulbs on the counter and listened. Then I heard it. Voices coming from our bedroom. Low, intimate, unmistakable. My stomach dropped like I'd stepped into a bottomless pit. Every logical thought tried to explain it away. Maybe Winnie wasn't feeling well, and Brad stopped by to help. Maybe they were moving furniture. Maybe there was some innocent reason my wife and our neighbor were behind a closed bedroom door on a Tuesday afternoon. But deep down, in that instinctive place that senses danger before your mind catches up, I already knew. I walked down the hall like a man headed for his own execution, each step heavier than the last. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and through that small opening, I saw everything I needed to. Winnie and Brad, tangled together on the bed I'd bought for our 10th anniversary, completely oblivious to me standing there. The same bed where we'd shared dreams, comforted Elijah through storms, and where I'd held my wife when her mother died last year. The hardware store bag slipped from my hand. The light bulbs hit the floor with a sound like my world cracking apart. The noise startled them. The room went silent, replaced by frantic shuffling and muffled curses. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching 12 years of my life disintegrate before my eyes. "Julian." Winnie's voice cut through the tension, not embarrassed or ashamed, but irritated, as if I'd interrupted her plans. Brad fumbled for his clothes, face burning red. At least one of them had the decency to look humiliated. "Julian, man, I can explain," he stammered. I raised my hand. "Don't," I said, my voice steady. "Just don't." Winnie wrapped the bedsheet around herself, sitting up with a look I'd never seen before, cold, calculating, like she was deciding how much effort this scene was worth. "You're home early," she said, as if that was the issue, not the betrayal, not the lies, just my bad timing. "Yeah," I replied, staring at the stranger who looked like my wife. "I am." Brad finished, buttoning his shirt, and edged toward the door. "I should go," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "This is between you two." As he passed, I caught the scent of Winnie's perfume clinging to his clothes. My stomach turned. How long had this been happening? How many afternoons had I been fixing air conditioners while they destroyed my marriage in that bed I'd saved months to buy? "Julian, sit down," Winnie said, her tone suddenly shifting. That same professional voice she used at work when explaining complicated insurance terms to patients just to confuse them. We need to talk about this like adults. Like adults. I laughed, but there wasn't an ounce of humor in it. You want to talk about adult behavior? Don't take that tone with me, she snapped. Things between us haven't been good for months. You know we've been living like roommates, not husband and wife. The audacity of it hit me like a punch to the gut. She was actually turning this around, somehow making her affair my fault. 12 years of marriage, and now I was to blame for her betrayal. So, your solution to our problems was sleeping with Brad Lawrence? I asked. I decided to find someone who still sees me as a woman, she shot back. Not just Elijah's mother or your housekeeper. That one stung, mostly because there was a sliver of truth buried in it. I had been working long hours, taking extra shifts to build savings for Elijah's future. But I thought I was being responsible, a good provider. What about Elijah? I asked quietly. What happens to our son when all of this blows up? For the first time, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe doubt, but it vanished just as fast. Elijah will adjust, she said. Kids are resilient. He'll be fine as long as we handle this like adults. Handle this maturely. Like I had any say in how to handle walking in on my wife and our neighbor. I looked around our bedroom. The framed wedding photo, Elijah's baby pictures, the memories of a life I thought was real. It all felt like evidence from a crime scene. Proof that the life I'd believed in never truly existed. I'm going to pick up Elijah from school, I finally said. When I get back, I want you gone. Julian, don't be dramatic, she said sharply. We can work through this. No, I said, my voice calm, steady. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt sure of something. We really can't. I drove to Elijah's school in a fog, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Every red light gave my mind too much time to replay what I'd seen. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was her indifference, the way she'd spoken like she'd rehearsed it all in advance. My phone buzzed nonstop, no doubt texts from Winnie, trying to spin the story before I could. I ignored them. Then Elijah came running out of Roosevelt Elementary, full of energy, backpack bouncing, shoelaces untied. His face lit up when he saw me. Dad, you picked me up. Are we going somewhere fun? Looking at my son, our son, something inside me shifted. He had no idea his world was about to fall apart. Whatever happened between Winnie and me, he didn't deserve to be caught in the wreckage. How about we get some ice cream and have a talk? I said, ruffling his brown hair. Ice cream on a Tuesday? Mom's gonna be mad, he grinned. If only that was our biggest problem. We sat in the Dairy Dream parking lot while Elijah devoured a chocolate sundae, and I tried to figure out how to tell him his parents' marriage was over. How do you explain to a third grader that the life he's always known just disappeared? Dad, you look sad. Elijah said, chocolate smeared on his chin. Did something bad happen at work? Son, I began carefully. Your mom and I are dealing with some grown-up problems. We might not be living together for a while. His spoon stopped midair. Like Tommy's parents? They got divorced last year. Kids notice everything. Maybe like that, I said softly. But no matter what happens, you're the most important thing in the world to both of us. Is it because I left my bike in the driveway again? My heart broke. No, Elijah, this has nothing to do with you. Sometimes adults make mistakes, and this is one of those times. When we got home, Winnie's car was gone. A note sat on the kitchen counter. Gone to stay with Vanessa. We'll talk lawyer to lawyer from now on. Don't poison Elijah against me. Don't poison him against her. As if I needed to do anything besides tell the truth. 3 weeks later, I was sitting across from Martha Henderson, the best divorce attorney in Springfield I could afford, which wasn't saying much on an HVAC tech's paycheck. Mr. Marsh, Martha said, scanning the stack of papers Winnie's lawyer had filed. I have to be honest. Your wife has brought in some serious legal firepower. Who? I asked. Preston Whitmore and Associates, she replied, a firm that charged more per hour than I earned in a week. Somehow, on a dental office receptionist salary, Winnie had managed to hire lawyers who usually handled corporate mergers. How's she paying for this? I asked. That's the question, Martha said. Either she's taken on massive debt, or someone else is bankrolling her. The paperwork painted me as an absent father and a neglectful husband. According to Winnie's version, I'd been so obsessed with work that I'd emotionally abandoned my family. No mention of the affair, just irreconcilable differences and my alleged failure to prioritize the marriage. They're asking for primary custody, the house, alimony, child support, Martha continued, flipping through pages, and they want you to pay their legal fees. Can they do that? I asked. They can ask for anything, she said grimly. Getting what they were asking for was another story. But Julian, Martha warned, you need to understand, this isn't going to be a friendly divorce. They're coming for everything. The preliminary hearing was a disaster. Winnie sat beside her lawyer, looking every bit the wounded spouse, dabbing at her eyes like the victim of my supposed neglect. Her sisters, Vanessa and Brittany, had even provided written statements, claiming I was a workaholic who'd emotionally withdrawn from my family. Your Honor, Winnie's attorney declared, my client was forced to seek emotional support elsewhere due to her husband's complete disengagement from the marriage. Forced to seek emotional support. That's what they were calling adultery now. When it was finally my turn to speak, I stood and looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, I worked overtime to save for my son's future. I fixed heating and cooling systems to provide for my family. If working hard to support the people you love makes you a bad husband, then I guess I'm guilty. The judge's expression didn't change, but there was something in his eyes, maybe recognition, maybe respect. Mr. Marsh, he asked, do you have any evidence of these alleged infidelities? I have my own testimony, Your Honor. I walked into my bedroom and found my wife with another man. Objection, Winnie's lawyer snapped. Hearsay and inflammatory. Overruled, the judge said. Mr. Marsh witnessed the incident firsthand. It was a small victory, but I took it. Walking out of that courthouse, I realized this wasn't just a divorce anymore. It was a war, and Winnie's family had declared it. Living in Derek Ward's spare bedroom felt like purgatory. My best friend since high school had offered me his couch after I lost the house during the custody fight. But sleeping in a room that smelled like his teenage son's gym clothes wasn't exactly the fresh start I'd imagined. 3 months after catching Winnie with Brad, I was barely keeping my head above water. The legal bills were killing me. Between attorney fees and the temporary support payments the court ordered, I was working 70-hour weeks just to stay afloat. Frank Donnelly, my boss, tried to be understanding, but I saw the worry in his eyes when I showed up for the 3rd weekend in a row. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was only seeing Elijah on weekends and Wednesday evenings. Winnie had moved in with her sister Vanessa, and somehow they'd convinced the custody evaluator that I was emotionally unstable because of work-related stress. Wednesday pickups at McDonald's were always painfully awkward. Winnie would sit in her car, watching while Elijah walked across the parking lot to mine, caught between us like a tiny peacekeeper. That evening, he climbed into my truck, his face more serious than any 8-year-old should be. Dad, he said quietly, Mom says you might have to move far away 'cause you can't afford to live here anymore. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Winnie was feeding him lies, preparing him for the day she'd have full custody and the freedom to move wherever she wanted. Son, I said, keeping my voice steady, I'm not going anywhere. This is our home, and I'm going to fight to stay close to you. I promise. I promise. But later that night, sitting in Derek's driveway, I wasn't sure how I could keep that promise. Winnie's family had deeper pockets than I'd ever realized. Her father, Harold, worked for a regional insurance company, and between him and Vanessa's husband, they were funding a legal assault I couldn't afford to fight. Derek found me sitting in my truck around midnight, staring at the child support worksheet that showed I'd have maybe $400 left each month after bills. Come inside, man, Derek said. You're going to drive yourself crazy doing math out here. I can't win this, Derek, I said quietly. They've got unlimited resources. One bad repair bill, and I'm done. So what? You're giving up, he asked. That question hit me hard. Was I really going to let Winnie and her family bulldoze me just because they had better lawyers? No, I said finally, feeling something solidify inside me. I'm going to figure out how to fight smarter, not just harder. That night, I started digging into everything I could about divorce law, custody battles, and financial defense. If I couldn't pay lawyers to think for me, I'd learn to think for myself. 2 weeks later, I found out just how deep Winnie's lies went. While organizing documents for Martha, I came across credit card statements I'd never seen before, accounts opened in my name, totaling over $30,000. Martha's face turned grim as she read through them. Julian, did you know your wife had taken out these credit lines? I've never seen these cards in my life, I said. The applications show your signature and social security number, she replied. According to this, you've been carrying this debt for 2 years. 2 years. The same time Winnie started complaining about money and urging me to take on more overtime. She'd been spending money I didn't even know we owed, all while making me feel guilty for not earning enough. What does this mean for the divorce? It means we needed to investigate whether this could be considered fraud. If my wife had forged my signature on these credit card applications, that was a criminal matter. The statements painted a disturbing picture. Lavish dinners at restaurants I'd never visited, hotel stays on days she claimed to be at her mother's, shopping sprees at lingerie and men's cologne stores. Gifts for Brad Lawrence, bought with money borrowed in my name. The real shock came when Martha's investigator dug deeper into the family finances. Vanessa Maddox, Wendy's older sister, wasn't just offering emotional support. She was funding Wendy's legal fight through a shell company owned by her husband. They had essentially set up a slush fund to bankrupt me. The goal, Martha explained, is to drag this out until you can't afford to fight anymore. Can we prove it? We're working on it. But Julian, there's more. The investigator discovered that Wendy's affair with Mr. Lawrence had been going on for at least 8 months, not 3, as she had claimed. 8 months. That meant Elijah had been witnessing this betrayal for most of the past year, all while I worked overtime to cover debts I didn't even know existed. There's more, Martha continued. Mr. Lawrence isn't just unemployed between construction jobs like he said. He has a pattern of targeting married women in suburban neighborhoods. This isn't random. It's a repeated behavior. The pieces were coming together. Brad wasn't just a neighbor who'd hooked up with my wife. He was a predator who had methodically destroyed my family for his own gain. Back at Frank Donnelly's office, the familiar scent of coffee and motor oil reminded me of honest work. I'd been putting in 16-hour days for 2 months, learning everything I could about running an HVAC business while fighting a legal battle that threatened to consume everything I'd built. Julian, Frank said, setting down a thick folder of financial documents. I've been thinking about our talk regarding the business. You've proven yourself over the past few months, working harder than any man should while dealing with personal hell. I straightened in my chair. This conversation could change everything. The truth is, I'm 62 and tired, Frank continued. My wife wants to retire somewhere warm, and I want to spend time with my grandkids before they're too grown to want me around. He opened the folder to reveal business plans, profit and loss statements, and purchase agreements. I'm prepared to sell you the business. Owner financing, reasonable terms. You've got the technical skills, and you've developed the business sense. Question is, are you ready to own something instead of just working for someone else? I thought about the fraud charges against Wendy, the ongoing custody battle, the mountain of legal debt. Then I thought about Elijah, the kind of man I wanted him to see when he looked at his father. Frank, 6 months ago, I was a guy who fixed air conditioners and came home to what I thought was a happy family. Today, I'm learning sometimes you have to tear down everything you know and rebuild it stronger. Is that a yes? That's a hell yes, he said. We spent the next 3 hours going over contracts, payment plans, and timelines. By Christmas, I would own Donnie's Climate Solutions. Not just a job anymore, a business, something I could build, something that could secure Elijah's future, something that was mine. Walking to my truck that evening, I felt something I hadn't in months, hope. Real, solid hope backed by a concrete plan. I had bought my own house and was building my company from scratch after everyone betrayed me. The thought came unbidden, but it felt right. Wendy and her family had tried to break me, but instead, they'd forced me to become stronger than I ever imagined. My phone buzzed with a text from Martha Henderson, fraud charges approved. Wendy's attorney wants to meet. They're ready to negotiate. For the first time since this nightmare began, I was negotiating from a position of strength. Derek found me in his garage that night, working on the business plan for my new company. You look different, he said. Like you found your fighting stance. I think I have, I replied. They wanted to destroy me financially, turn me into a broken man who couldn't provide for his son. Instead, they pushed me to become a business owner. What's the plan? He asked. Simple, I said. Build something so solid they can't touch it. Create a future for Elijah that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. I looked down at the papers spread across Derek's workbench. Purchase agreements, loan documents, business licenses. 6 months ago, This level of responsibility would have terrified me. Tonight, it felt like freedom. The knock on my front door came one Saturday morning in May. I'd been living in my own house for exactly 1 week. A modest 3-bedroom ranch I bought with the savings from my grueling work schedule and the down payment Frank helped me structure. Through the peephole, I saw Vanessa Maddox holding what looked like a casserole dish, her expression overly sweet and rehearsed. Behind her, Brittany, Wendy's younger sister, fidgeted nervously. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Julian," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "Congratulations on the new house. We brought a housewarming gift." "That's thoughtful," I replied, making no move to take the casserole. "What can I do for you?" "Well, we were hoping to talk. Family to family." Family. The same people who funded Wendy's legal war against me were now playing the family card. "We're not family anymore, Vanessa," I said. "Your sister made that very clear when she tried to destroy our marriage." Brittany shifted uncomfortably. "Julian, we know the divorce was heated, but that's in the past. We're here because we care about you." "Care about me?" I couldn't help but laugh. Where was this care when they were bankrolling attorneys to take my son away? Vanessa's mask slipped slightly. "We were protecting our sister." "Protecting her from what?" I asked. "The consequences of her own choices," Vanessa said. "We know you've done well with your business," she continued. "We're proud of you for turning your life around." There it was, the real reason for their visit. They had heard about my success and suddenly remembered their family feelings. "The thing is," Brittany jumped in, "Harold has some health issues, and the medical bills are piling up. Wendy mentioned you might be willing to help, considering our connection through Elijah." Help out. They wanted money. The same people who tried to bankrupt me were now asking for a loan because their own finances had collapsed. "How much?" I asked, curious how far their desperation went. "Maybe 20,000, Vanessa said, "just to get caught up. Of course, we'd pay you back with interest." $20,000 to the people who had labeled me an unfit father, claiming I was emotionally unavailable and financially irresponsible. "You know what's interesting?" I said, leaning on the doorframe. 6 months ago, when I was sleeping on Derek's couch and eating simple dinners, none of you thought I deserved family support. But now that I own a business and bought a house, suddenly I'm worth talking to. "That's not fair," Brittany protested. "We always cared about you." "Really?" "Because I remember Vanessa testifying that I was an absent father who cared more about work than family. And Brittany, you told the court I was emotionally abusive to Wendy." Both sisters looked embarrassed. "That was just legal strategy," Vanessa said. "We didn't mean it personally." "Legal strategy?" I nodded. In this visit, was this legal strategy too? Or were they genuinely shameless? The answer was no. No to the loan. No to pretending we were still family. No to ignoring the last year. I had built something they couldn't touch, couldn't take, and couldn't control. As I watched them drive away, disappointed and empty-handed, I realized I had finally won. Not just the divorce or the custody battle, something bigger. I had won back my self-respect. The entire Maddox clan showed up at my house on a Sunday afternoon in August. Wendy, her sisters, her parents, even Brad Lawrence lurking in the background, finally realizing he'd overstepped. I was in my garage, working on Donnie's Climate Solutions books, now officially mine, when I heard the commotion. Through the window, I saw them arranging themselves on my front lawn like an intervention squad. Wendy stood at the front wearing a dress I'd never seen before, probably bought with stolen joint funds. Behind her, Harold and Savannah Maddox looked older, defeated. Medical bills and legal fees had taken their toll. I walked outside, wiping grease from my hands. "Julian," Wendy said, her tone that reasonable, persuasive voice she used to get what she wanted. "We need to talk, all of us, as a family." "We're not family," I replied calmly. "You made that clear when you destroyed our marriage and tried to take my son. Don't be dramatic." Vanessa jumped in. "We're here because we care about you. Look around. You're living in this house all alone. That can't be healthy." "Alone?" I said. They made it sound like a disease instead of the peace I'd fought so hard to achieve. "I'm not alone," I said. "I have Elijah every other week. I have a business to run. I have friends who actually support me instead of tearing me down." Harold stepped forward, playing the patriarch card one last time. "Son, you're being selfish. After everything we've been through as a family, you're going to turn your back on those who need your help." "Those who need my help?" I laughed. Harold, where was this concern when I was sleeping on Derek's couch? When your daughter was lying in court about me? When you were funding a legal war designed to ruin me? That was different, Savannah interjected. We were protecting Wendy. Protecting her from what? I asked. The consequences of your own actions? Trying another approach, she said. Julian, I know I've made mistakes. I hurt you, but we have a son together. Doesn't that mean anything? Our son means everything to me. That's why I fought so hard to keep him close when they tried to take him away. We could be a family again, she continued, tears forming. People forgive, people move forward. You're successful now. You've proven your point. The manipulation was staggering. She actually thought I'd take her back now that I had money and stability, as if the last 2 years of betrayal and legal battles were some test I had passed. Wendy, let me be very clear, I said, locking eyes with her. I built my house and my company from scratch after your entire family betrayed me. Now you're angry because I won't let you back into a life you tried to destroy. You had your chance to be family when I needed support. You chose to be enemies. Now, I don't need or want any of you in my life. I turned and walked back inside, closing the door on that chapter forever. 5 years later, I stood in the backyard of my new home, a 4-bedroom colonial in Springfield's best school district, watching Elijah practice soccer with a goal net I'd installed the previous weekend. At 13, he was taller than his mother, with my stubborn jaw and a proud independence. Dad, Elijah called. Coach Martinez wants to know if you can help with a fundraiser for new uniforms. I'll call Coach Martinez tonight, I replied, thinking how different this conversation would have been 5 years ago when I could barely afford groceries. Donnie's Climate Solutions had grown into the top HVAC company across 3 counties. We employed 22 people, had contracts with half the downtown commercial buildings, and a waiting list for residential service. I had bought Frank out completely 2 years ago, and the business was thriving under my ownership. The divorce had been finalized in my favor once the fraud charges stuck. Supervised visitation for Wendy and a small support payment. Brad Lawrence had served 18 months for conspiracy to commit fraud and eventually moved out of state. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek Ward. Barbecue at my place Saturday. Bringing anyone special? I smiled, thinking of Sarah Mitchell, a veterinarian I'd been dating for 8 months. Honest, independent, supportive, nothing like Wendy. The Maddox family had collapsed spectacularly after I refused their demands. Harold's medical bills forced them to sell their house and move to a small apartment. Vanessa's marriage had ended under financial stress. She was working 2 jobs. Brittany moved back with her parents and drove for a rideshare company. Winnie had found work as a receptionist in a low-rent clinic, living in a small studio, and taking the bus for her weekend visits with Elijah. She called me twice in the year, once for rent help, once about co-parenting. Both times, I politely declined, suggesting lawyers handle any legitimate concerns about Elijah. Dad, are you proud of me? Elijah asked, joining me on the deck after practice. Every single day, son. Why do you ask? Some kids say their parents divorced because their dads weren't good enough. I wanted to make sure that's not why you and Mom split up. I put my arm around his shoulders. This young man already showed the strength and integrity I hoped I modeled. Your mother and I split because she made choices that hurt our family. But you, Elijah, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Every sacrifice, every long day, every fight. It was all worth it to build the life we have now. He nodded, satisfied, and went inside to shower. I stood on the deck, looking at the life I'd built through perseverance and refusing to give up. Tomorrow, I'd wake up in my house, drive to my business, and keep building something that belonged entirely to me and my son. For the first time in years, I felt completely free.